February 10th, 2026. A date that would be etched into the annals of modern diplomacy. What unfolded that day wasn't just another royal visit. It was a statement, a declaration, a carefully orchestrated display of power that left even the most experienced diplomatic observers speechless. Picture this. A sleek aircraft touches down on Saudi soil, and waiting at the bottom of those stairs isn't some mid-level official or protocol officer. No, standing there in person is Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman himself. Think about that for a second. The actual Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, waiting like you'd wait for a sitting head of state. Except this wasn't a reigning monarch stepping off that plane. This was Prince William, technically still just the heir to the British throne. But the way he was being treated, that told a completely different story. The moment his feet touched that red carpet, 21 guns fired in salute. 21. That's the kind of welcome reserved for presidents and kings, not princes. The Saudi Royal Honor Guard stood like statues along a crimson pathway that seemed to stretch forever across the tarmac. These weren't just any soldiers either. We're talking about warriors in pristine white robes, ceremonial swords gleaming in the desert sun, every single detail calculated for maximum impact, and the music. First came God Save the King, Britain's anthem echoing across the Riyadh sky. Then the Saudi national anthem followed, both played by military bands who'd clearly rehearsed this choreography down to the last note. People watching across the Arab world were saying things like, "This isn't protocol, this is history being written in real time." From that red carpet, William was escorted to a convoy that looked like something out of a blockbuster film. Armored Rolls-Royce vehicles surrounded by Saudi Arabia's most elite security forces working in perfect sync with British royal protection officers. The whole scene was broadcast live on Al Arabiya and Saudi TV, with captions that basically screamed, "This is a state reception for a future sovereign." Experts were quick to point out that this level of ceremony is almost never given to foreign royalty who aren't actually ruling yet. The implication was crystal clear. In Saudi eyes, William wasn't being treated as someone waiting in the wings. He was being honored as if he already wore the crown. Inside the stunning Yamamah Palace, the official power center of Riyadh, things got even more extraordinary. William was greeted with a traditional sword dance performed by Bedouin warriors. Again, this is typically something reserved exclusively for Saudi kings. The palace itself was a vision, all golden atriums and crystal chandeliers that sparkled like stars. Photographers captured the exact moment when William and Mohammed bin Salman shook hands beneath their respective national flags. Saudi commentators immediately dubbed it the Handshake of Dynasties. By morning, that image was plastered across newspapers from London all the way to Jeddah. Even William's clothing choices were loaded with meaning. He wore a perfectly tailored navy suit with a green silk pocket square. Subtle, right? Except green happens to be Saudi Arabia's national color. Nothing about this visit was accidental. Every detail served a purpose. That evening's banquet was where William really showed his diplomatic skills. He opened his speech in Arabic. "Assalamu alaikum," he said. "My family honors this land and its legacy." Simple words, but the impact was enormous. The meal itself was a carefully curated affair, completely halal, featuring roasted camel with saffron rice, traditional lamb kabza, and Arabian dates served alongside cardamom coffee. Seated around that table were Saudi ministers, British defense envoys, and ambassadors from both nations. This wasn't just dinner. This was the stage for something much bigger. Because here's the thing. While everyone was focused on the pageantry and the spectacle, the real story was unfolding behind closed doors. William's presence marked the official launch of something called the Royal Strategic Vision 2040. This was a bilateral framework covering everything from energy transition to defense innovation to cultural preservation. One British official, speaking off the record, put it perfectly. "This is diplomacy at the level of legacy. Not just government to government, but crown to crown." The ceremonial highlight came when William received the King Abdulaziz Medal of Excellence, which is literally Saudi Arabia's highest civilian honor for foreign dignitaries. In return, he presented Crown Prince Mohammed with a custom-made brigade timepiece engraved with the joint crests of both the UK and Saudi Arabia. The symbolism was impossible to miss. Legacy, continuity, trust. From that scarlet carpet at the airport to the diamond-lit corridors of the palace, William's arrival in Riyadh was making one thing absolutely unmistakable. He wasn't just the future king anymore. He was already operating like a global monarch. Now, the second day is where things get really interesting. The cameras mostly stayed outside when William entered Riyadh's Cyber Defense Command complex. All the public saw was a handshake. But inside that building, history was being made. For the first time ever, the British Crown, with William's signature, entered into a trilateral security protocol with Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. This wasn't some symbolic agreement. This was about joint cyber defense infrastructure, AI-assisted threat detection, and digital sovereignty. British officials were calling this thing NATO-level sophisticated. The UK was getting access to brand-new Saudi cyber defense nodes stretching from Riyadh to Neom, with reciprocal data-sharing pathways for British signals intelligence teams. The protocol got a name too, the Cyber Crescent Accord, and here's the kicker. It operates completely independently of Five Eyes and EU-led mechanisms. William was essentially crafting an entirely new digital alliance architecture in the post-Brexit era. During the press briefing, Lord Pembroke, the Royal Foreign Affairs Coordinator, revealed that William's delegation included top-level representation from GCHQ, MI6 cyber operations, and before anyone else systems. They confirmed they're in exploratory talks with the Saudi Digital Defense Authority to co-develop a joint AI surveillance platform designed to predict and neutralize cyber threats targeting Gulf trade corridors and British shipping lanes through the Red Sea and Strait of Hormuz. But the cyber agreement was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. The financial component was equally groundbreaking. Enter the Royal Strategic Investment Fund, or RSIF for short. This new vehicle, announced through a partnership between the Prince and the Saudi Public Investment Fund, launched with £6.2 billion in initial commitments. The RSIF's mission? Co-financing infrastructure, green energy, and advanced medical technologies across Commonwealth countries, starting with pilot programs in Kenya, Malaysia, and Barbados. Here's what makes this truly unprecedented. The RSIF structure deliberately avoids traditional IMF and World Bank channels. Instead, fund governance is tied to a Crown-led ethics board chaired by Princess Anne. This marks the first time a British royal financial instrument will be directly co-managed with a sovereign Gulf entity. The Prince's spokesperson called it a blueprint for post-imperial economic diplomacy. Not everyone was thrilled, of course. Critics in Westminster were already raising concerns about the fund's non-parliamentary oversight and what they saw as deepening royal Gulf entanglement, especially given Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's ongoing efforts to rebrand his kingdom through mega-projects and celebrity partnerships. But supporters argued that William was playing a long game, building sovereign-to-sovereign leverage in an era when traditional institutions like the UN and G7 are losing traction in the global south. Later that day, in a closed-door session at the British Trade Office in Riyadh, William oversaw the signing of 8 new memoranda of understanding. These covered dual-use satellite technology, AI ethics in battlefield robotics, and DET, AI-anchored climate modeling platforms. Observers noted the presence of major British firms like Kinetic, Darktrace, and Arm Holdings, making it clear this visit wasn't just symbolic, it was deeply tactical. That evening brought one of the most revealing moments of the entire trip. At a rare off-the-record gathering at the King Abdulaziz Center for World Culture, William reportedly told local leaders that the monarchy's future depends not on nostalgia, but on intelligent alignment. People who were there described it as less diplomatic and more visionary. It echoed Prince Philip's technocratic ambitions, but on a completely different geopolitical scale. While nobody explicitly mentioned Prince Harry or the fractured Sussex situation, palace aides confirmed that King Charles had personally reviewed the RSIF charter and defense protocols before William's departure. That implicit royal endorsement spoke volumes. Some analysts saw this as Charles's way of demonstrating confidence in his son's readiness for sovereign leadership, particularly during ongoing transitions in global power dynamics. By day's end, a joint statement from both the Saudi royal court and Buckingham Palace confirmed that the two royal families had committed to annual defense summits, with the first scheduled for London in March 2027. The statement concluded with a quietly historic phrase about shared guardianship of regional stability and technological peace. Halfway through his visit, William had already transformed the very language of British diplomacy. This wasn't cloaked in colonial legacies or tentative soft power. His strategy appeared sharp, transactional, and unapologetically FUT. You're facing... But let's dig deeper into what was really happening here. That red carpet welcome on February 10th wasn't symbolic. It was calculated, theatrical, and above all, strategic. As the Duke of Cornwall and Rothesay's aircraft descended under extraordinary security, a three-tiered Saudi reception team was already positioned. The Royal Guard in ceremonial dress, the Minister of Foreign Affairs himself, and a carefully selected group of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's diplomatic advisors, all trained at London, Oxford, and Geneva. This wasn't a cultural exchange. This was a royal mandate wrapped in protocol. William's presence in Saudi Arabia had three high-stakes objectives. First, rebuild strained diplomatic trust following recent controversies. Second, initiate confidential intelligence cooperation on threats to royal legitimacy. And third, assert the House of Windsor's clean succession doctrine on an international legal stage. But here's something the public didn't know at the time. William wasn't alone in this mission. Princess Anne had actually arrived in Riyadh 2 days earlier under an encrypted diplomatic itinerary marked only by a code word in UK GCC communications. Operation Falcon. Her role? Finalizing a memorandum of understanding with Saudi counterintelligence regarding background verification protocols, surveillance cooperation, and royal legitimacy assessments. This had become critical following rising global concerns over false lineage claims. The issue had reached a breaking point in January after multiple governments started questioning the authenticity of documentation presented during certain overseas appearances. Saudi Arabia found itself in a particularly awkward position after hosting someone at a private cultural gala in Dubai, only to discover through internal diplomatic channels that the titles being referenced no longer carried legal weight under UK royal directives. So Anne's quiet presence ahead of William's arrival was absolutely crucial. It allowed for behind-the-scenes dialogue with Saudi intelligence heads, especially regarding sensitive materials reportedly contained in what became known as the Saudi Dossier. We're talking about files that allegedly contained early warnings about infiltration patterns through global elite networks. When William stepped onto that tarmac on February 10th, everything had already been choreographed. Camera angles were pre-selected, local journalists had been briefed on future sovereign diplomacy, and Crown Prince Mohammed had been instructed to use one very specific phrase when greeting the Duke of Cornwall. "Welcome, future custodian of peace." Now, that might sound like standard ceremonial language, but it was actually a geopolitical signal. In Saudi tradition, the title custodian is reserved for protectors of sacred trust. By applying it to William, MBS was aligning himself not with Charles, but with the future of the monarchy as embodied by William and Catherine. More importantly, it was a not-so-subtle rejection of chaos associated with certain self-branded diplomatic efforts by other royals. Inside the gilded halls of the royal court later that day, William and Crown Prince Mohammed held a closed-door session that reportedly lasted over 3 hours, though palace sources haven't disclosed full details. Credible insiders confirmed several major agenda items. The establishment of a UK-Saudi noble lineage verification accord aimed at preventing fraudulent royal representation abroad. The creation of a joint sovereign ethics board to be co-chaired by retired UK High Court judges and Saudi legal scholars, focused on diplomatic titles, financial transparency in royal charities, and prevention of title misuse in media contracts. And perhaps most significantly, a sensitive briefing on transatlantic intelligence findings about shell companies and unexplained Gulf Fund transfers. There was also the presentation of a sealed royal file to Prince William, delivered in person by a representative from Saudi Arabia's General Intelligence Presidency. This file reportedly contained verified records, digital evidence, and witness statements contradicting key claims regarding certain children's birthplaces, custody status, and baptismal affiliations.
Sources suggest this was initially gathered as part of Saudi Arabia's broader cooperation with the UK on identifying risks to public figures and national image integrity. Princess Anne, upon receiving the file in a private pre-meeting, reportedly responded with one sentence that has since circulated through diplomatic channels. "This confirms our worst fears and justifies every step we've taken." That evening at the state banquet hosted in Yamamah Palace, Prince William delivered a brief but pointed speech. Dressed in formal black tie with a Saudi-embroidered sash, he avoided overt political language but sent a clear message about legacy, truth, and institutional renewal. In every era, he said, the role of a royal is tested not by titles or privilege, but by how faithfully they serve the truth of their people and the bonds that unite our nations. Tonight, I stand not only as my father's heir, but as a guardian of shared honor between sovereign families. His remarks received a standing ovation, broadcast live on Saudi state television and replayed repeatedly on British news channels. But it was Princess Anne's discreet presence at the edge of the banquet, unphotographed but unmistakable to trained diplomatic eyes, that confirmed what many royal insiders already suspected. The monarchy's battle for legitimacy wasn't just personal, it was strategic, global, institutional. As William retired for the night at the guest wing of the royal court complex, sources confirmed that a second confidential summit would be held the following day with attendees from the UAE, Bahrain, and Jordan's royal households. The House of Windsor was reclaiming its sovereignty, not just at home but across the international stage, and doing so with precision, silence, and calculated patience. The opulence of Riyadh was merely the surface. Beneath the glittering marble floors of the King Abdulaziz Conference Center and the formal bows at arrival, Prince William had entered a realm of veiled interests and overlapping agendas. This wasn't ceremonial theater, it was a royal operation in real time with economic and political implications echoing far beyond the Desert Kingdom. By February 10, 2026, the Crown Prince of the United Kingdom had transitioned from royal guest to strategic envoy. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman had cleared his entire schedule for a full day of bilateral sessions with William, signaling just how serious this encounter truly was. These two future kings meet not as figureheads, but as stewards of influence, representing monarchies actively redefining their global roles amid radically shifting geopolitics. Inside Riyadh's royal court, 4 major agenda items dominated the conversation. Defense cooperation came first. With growing instability in the Red Sea corridor and renewed threats in Yemen, the UK and Saudi Arabia discussed not only joint naval exercises but also contingency planning involving AI-powered drone deterrent systems. William, who'd been personally briefed by British military strategists before his flight, emphasized transparency and accountability, calling for ethical deployment mechanisms that uphold international humanitarian law. Technology partnerships formed the second pillar. The House of Windsor's Crown Sovereign Fund, recently restructured under Catherine's modernization doctrine, presented an invitation for co-investment in future cities and AI ethics boards. Saudi Arabia's NEOM project aligned closely with these ambitions. William proposed a memorandum of understanding to develop what he called a digital peace accord, an initiative he claimed would govern the frontiers of human-machine sovereignty. Climate and water scarcity solutions represented the third focus. William reactivated the joint UK Gulf Green Transition Fund, initially tabled back in 2022, offering British innovation in desalination technology in exchange for long-term mineral supply contracts.
The Saudis showed interest, but only if the UK agreed to a 10-year phase tax treaty for Saudi sovereign wealth investments in British infrastructure. William remained non-committal but didn't rule it out. Cultural heritage protect. Qian brought perhaps the most personal moment. William spoke about preserving sacred history for future peoples. The House of Windsor offered to co-curate an international exhibition of Arabian Peninsula antiquities in London, underwritten partly by the Royal Collection Trust. The Saudis, impressed by the gesture, proposed a reciprocal showcase of Windsor archives in Riyadh, including a rare Diana collection pending family clearance. Sources close to the Crown delegation described William's diplomatic style as measured but not mechanical. He didn't rely on royal mystique. Instead, he operated like a precision instrument, firm on principles, flexible on optics, and willing to withhold gestures until conditions were optimal. During his midday meeting with Education Minister Youssef al-Benyan, William requested private time with female Saudi STEM scholars, an unannounced stop that palace aides said was his personal insistence. Every visual element was strategic. William's choice of navy tailoring with a geometric tie subtly referenced both British tradition and regional motifs. His tone during the Riyadh Press Forum, where he said the future is collaborative, not extractive, earned cautious praise from Gulf analysts and was later quoted verbatim in local editorials. Though not physically present, Princess Catherine remained a powerful symbol throughout the visit. Her recorded message to the Riyadh Peace Tech Youth Forum was broadcast during a break in formal meetings, where she praised Saudi Arabia's emerging generation of female coders and entrepreneurs. Her words, "Peace is not the absence of struggle, but the architecture of dignity," were translated and shared widely on local media, prompting several prominent Saudi women to thank her publicly on social platforms. Notably, one aide confirmed that Catherine had personally selected the gift William presented to MBS, a handcrafted Windsor mosaic encased in a circular olive wood frame, etched with the phrase "Unity of Crown and Crescent." The symbolism did not go unnoticed. By dusk, William convened his senior advisors in the UK diplomatic suite overlooking Riyadh's skyline. The mood was serious. A new doctrine was being drafted, not in headlines but in legal language and cultural bridges. This was the emergence of what aides had begun referring to as the Windsor Horizon, a strategic vision for monarchy as a stabilizing soft power actor in the post-American century, unlike Charles's often reactive leadership. William's approach in Riyadh was preemptive. He wasn't waiting for crisis or scandal to define his reign. He was actively shaping a legacy that tethered monarchy to action, not merely tradition. Yet not everyone back in Britain celebrated the visit. Human rights advocates criticized the timing and tone, suggesting it risked sanitizing recent crackdowns. A leaked memo from within the Foreign Office revealed concerns that the royal household was outpacing Parliament in areas of strategic diplomacy, with one civil servant writing, "We must not confuse ceremonial momentum with democratic mandate." William, aware of such criticisms, made no overt political statements. But during a closed-door roundtable with UK business leaders in Riyadh, he delivered a pointed reminder. The Crown must adapt, not to chase approval, but to uphold stability in a world that is shedding its anchors, as the sea. All to Maghrib echoed over Riyadh's skyline. Prince William stood alone briefly on the palace balcony. Cameras were not allowed. A senior aide observed him staring into the distance, deep in thought. It was only day one, but the message was clear. This wasn't the tour of a royal son, it was the debut of a royal strategist. The evening air in Riyadh crackled with anticipation. Prince William, standing beside Princess Anne beneath the carved alabaster arches of the diplomatic palace, had just completed the final round of talks with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. A thick portfolio embossed with the House of Windsor seal was now in the hands of the Saudi Crown Court. Its contents, a comprehensive set of institutional documents, resolutions, and correspondence aimed at drawing an unflinching line between the British monarchy and certain discredited activities. "It is no longer tolerable," Princess Anne stated during the post-meeting press appearance. The Windsor institution must never again be used to conceal financial schemes, misappropriate influence, or deflect accountability. Her voice, crisp and clear, sent a message not only to the Gulf partners in attendance but to the world. This wasn't symbolic. This was an erasure. In London, the documents submitted to the Saudi court mirrored those handed to the UK's Charity Commission, the US IRS, and the United Nations Global Compact Office. A copy had even been lodged with the European Anti-Fraud Office in Brussels. At the heart of it all was a multi-pronged repudiation of certain international ventures under disputed banners, including commercial engagements in the UAE, Qatar, and most recently at Riyadh Design Week. The documents laid out in legally precise terms how titles had been misused for brand elevation and influencer contracts, how operations failed to register under proper foreign disclosure protocols, and how events featured royal emblems without permission. All of this came to a head during a February 3rd Riyadh fashion panel where someone was introduced as Her Royal Highness, visionary patron of the House of Windsor's global future. That phrase, uttered on stage in front of international press, triggered not only a palace firestorm but a Saudi inquiry. A promotional photo standing beneath a Windsor family crest digitally imposed in the background was the final straw. King Charles, advised by legal counsel and the Lord Chamberlain's office, had signed a sovereign statement the following day. It revoked all ceremonial rights to international representation, declaring no individual, no matter their lineage, may act on behalf of this crown without formal writ and institutional clarity. Though not officially exiled, certain individuals were now barred from diplomatic participation, global philanthropic branding under royal auspices, and co-signatory authority in any royal trust involving education, sustainability, or military rehabilitation. The document was sent to 29 foreign governments, 12 international bodies, and over 200 corporate partners. In private, Prince William was said to be devastated, not out of fraternal sadness, but because he'd long resisted the idea of such public action. But as he explained to aides during a closed-door meeting, this is no longer about family. This is about the institution, and the institution is bleeding. That bleedin'. G had become critical after revelations from Saudi sources indicated that certain foundations had signed confidential revenue-sharing agreements with Dubai-based holding companies specializing in what insiders called influence placement and strategic visibility procurement, terms often associated with image laundering. One such firm had worked in the past with reality TV stars and former politicians accused of fraud. Leaked emails showed promises to reposition certain individuals as global heritage icons by second quarter 2026. One slide included a mocked-up magazine cover with the tagline "From Windsor to the World, the new face of royal grace." Catherine's image was faintly visible in the background, blurred, cropped, and unnamed. This wasn't branding, Princess Anne reportedly told a colleague at Clarence House upon reviewing the materials. This was identity theft. By February 7th, the British ambassador to Saudi Arabia had been instructed to cancel all soft diplomacy invitations involving disputed parties. At the same time, the IRS issued a preliminary audit request for unreported international revenue and unauthorized use of state symbols. The damage had metastasized quickly. Netflix pulled promotional material for upcoming projects. Spotify quietly scrubbed podcast archives. Even certain production houses paused development deals, citing pending legal clarity. The final blow came from within. In a call leaked to the Times, private words were heard saying, "I told her this was too far. I told her not to push the royal titles anymore. But she doesn't listen. She says she's fighting for justice. I don't know what she's fighting for anymore." The words, spoken quietly, were explosive. Princess Anne, briefed on the leak, responded not with emotion but protocol. She issued an internal directive to all royal patronages and departments. Effective immediately, certain foundations and their affiliates are not to be included, invited, or listed in any royal diplomatic program, bilateral initiative, youth engagement partnership, or philanthropic ledger. This is non-negotiable. With that, the bridge was scorched, and the monarchy marched forward. As the royal plane lifted off from King Khalid International Airport at twilight, the British flag fluttering on its tail, a hush settled over the gathered dignitaries and press. Prince William's historic visit to Saudi Arabia, concluded on February 10, 2026, was no longer just a political headline. It had transformed into a defining chapter of royal diplomacy. And it marked something else, too. The beginning of William's global statesmanship. Inside the plane's private cabin, aides said the prince remained composed but contemplative. This visit was unlike any other in his career. It wasn't ceremonial, it was strategic. From Riyadh to Neom, every gesture and word had been calculated with three goals: rebuild trust with the Gulf, assert British independence from US-led diplomatic posturing, and reshape the monarchy's global image in a new era. International outlets from the Times to Al Arabiya praised the prince for his restraint and clear-eyed moral realism. Behind the scenes, William had pushed for language around dignified pluralism and constructive sovereignty, signaling a shift away from dependency narratives and toward mutual accountability between the UK and Gulf nations. It wasn't about pandering, it was about redefining influence. Notably absent from press coverage was the woman who'd helped frame the visit's ethical boundaries. Princess Catherine, recovering privately from prior health challenges, had sent a hand-penned letter thanking her counterpart for hospitality and emphasizing the value of familial diplomacy among royal women. That letter, later photographed in Saudi royal archives, would be quoted for years. On the final night, during a private desert dinner hosted under a moonlit tent in the outskirts of Riyadh, Prince William and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman shared an unscripted hour-long conversation. No aides, no translators, just two heirs. According to sources, they discussed succession pressures, family legacy, and the role of narrative in an AI-dominated media age. One line stood out, reportedly spoken by William. "When the cameras go away, what we protect isn't just a kingdom or a crown, it's the thread of truth our children will inherit." That line, leaked to a British journalist accompanying the delegation, became the unofficial quote of the mission. By the time the prince landed back in London, global reaction was swift. The Canadian Prime Minister issued a statement praising the UK's resurgence of dignified engagement. The EU hinted at broader trilateral cooperation. And in Washington? Silence. A stark contrast to the noise of past months, yet perhaps the most important consequence was domestic. The monarchy, long battered by internal scandal, had reclaimed the initiative, not through spectacle but through substance. As the gates of Kensington Palace closed behind the returning motorcade, one Yale historian captured the moment perfectly. It was never just a visit, it was a blueprint. So there you have it. February 10th, 2026. The day Prince William didn't just visit Saudi Arabia. The day he showed the world exactly what kind of monarch he's preparing to become. Strategic, calculated, unapologetically forward-thinking. This wasn't about maintaining the status quo, this was about rewriting the rules entirely. If you found this deep dive fascinating, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more royal insights and global diplomacy analysis. The story of the modern monarchy is still being written, and trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.